An exhausted, legendary archmage escapes his dying fantasy world and returns to Earth, only to possess the body of an ultra-wealthy billionaire heir. But he didn't possess this body to live a life of luxury. He is exactly 3 years before his magical home is completely wiped from existence by a soul-consuming apocalypse. To stop it, he needs an army of humans to fight the corruption, but modern Earthlings would never willingly risk their lives in a real demonic war zone. So, he combines his supreme magic with his corporate wealth to build a fake tech startup, tricking the entire planet into believing this deadly alien world is just a newly released virtual reality game. He even forces his most powerful subordinates, including a Holy Knight Commander and a literal succubus, to dress up and act as tragic video game NPCs to keep the players hooked. Now, thousands of oblivious Earth gamers are lining up to log into a simulation where the monsters, the magic, and the deaths are completely real. Can this genius archmage trick humanity into saving his world, or will his massive lie fall apart when the players realize they aren't actually playing a game? Archmage Kim Jin-woo was once an ordinary human from Earth, but he was summoned to the fantasy world of Arsalan. He rose to become a legendary mage, but right now, he is completely exhausted. His new home is facing an apocalyptic threat known as the Erosion of Ruin. This dark, corrupting force has already consumed about 90% of the planet, turning the land into a barren wasteland of writhing tentacles and monsters. The only reason anyone is still alive is because of a magical barrier Jin-woo personally created. But there is a catch. The barrier relies on a massive cluster of mana crystals to stay active. Those crystals are rapidly draining, and they will only last for another 3 years. Once the power runs out, the barrier will fall, and the entire world of Arslan will be wiped out. As Jin-woo stares out at the decaying lands, his loyal disciple, a high elf named Darius, warns him not to push himself too hard. She knows how dangerous it is to face the erosion alone. However, Jin-woo does not have a choice. The natives of Arslan cannot survive in the corrupted territories because the erosion quickly consumes their souls. But Jin-woo is an otherworlder. Since his soul comes from Earth, he is completely immune to the corruption, and he actually grows stronger whenever he destroys an erosion source. But fighting an entire apocalypse by himself is a crushing burden. Back on Earth, Jin-woo worked himself to death from constant overtime, and now he is doing the exact same thing in this fantasy world. He desperately wants to put everything down and just rest. But the moment he finally lets go of his worries, something incredible happens. A brilliant light wraps around him, and his soul suddenly awakens into a transcendent state. Through this new transcendent power, a massive stone gateway appears in the sky. This is the Gate of Souls, a portal that allows his soul to travel back to his original homeland. Deciding he has nothing left to lose, Jin-woo sends his soul flying through the portal. He emerges in a sky filled with skyscrapers and realizes he has returned to Earth. But there is a shocking twist. Looking at the futuristic city below, he discovers that 100 years have passed since he was first summoned. Unfortunately, Jin-woo has a massive problem. The ambient magic on Earth is incredibly low. If he remains in his translucent soul form for too long, his soul will fade away and disappear forever. To survive, he needs to find a human body that has no soul. Luckily, he senses a faint energy coming from a nearby mansion and slips inside. Inside, he finds a young man lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by a wealthy, grieving family and doctors who have given up hope. This young man is Lee Jin-woo, the brilliant youngest grandson of the massive Ocean Group. His body is physically alive, but his soul is completely gone, leaving him just hours away from death. Seeing the perfect vessel, the Archmage uses his magic to possess the body and restore its failing organs. The possession works, and the young man opens his eyes. The grieving grandfather is overjoyed, and the entire family bursts into tears of gratitude. Once the chaotic family leaves him alone for the evening, Jin-woo rests in his new, luxurious bedroom. He realizes that living as a wealthy heir is incredibly comfortable, and his new body is recovering perfectly. However, he cannot fully relax. Arslan is still ticking toward destruction, and he only has 3 years left to save it. He starts wondering if there is a realistic way to defeat the erosion. If he had modern military weapons, or perhaps hundreds of thousands of heroes to fight alongside him, they could easily clear the monsters. Trying to clear his head, he turns on a handheld gaming console to play a classic fantasy role-playing game. He stares at the screen, thinking about how amazing it would be if he could summon actual heroes to Arslan just like in the game. But as he makes this wish, his latent magical power suddenly reacts with the device. A bright notification flashes across the screen, declaring that he is summoning an Earthling hero. Looking at the flashing screen, a bold plan takes shape in Jin-woo's mind. To save Arslan from impending destruction, he needs help. He must open the Gate of Souls and summon people from Earth. But doing so out of nowhere would cause massive panic. To make them cooperate, he decides on a clever cover story. He will convince these Earthlings that Arslan is nothing more than a highly immersive virtual reality game. This is where Jin-woo's unique background comes in handy. In his past life, he was a dedicated game developer. In this life, he is a legendary archmage. By combining his modern game design knowledge with his incredible magical powers, he can guide these Earth players through carefully crafted stories to clear the erosion safely. With only 3 years left before the world is destroyed, his Archmage's soul urges him to give it everything he has. The next day, Jinwoo joins his wealthy family for a formal dinner at his grandfather's grand estate. His grandfather, still terrified of losing him again, is desperate to keep him happy. When Jinwoo politely announces that he wants to develop a game, the room falls into a shocked silence. Some relatives are outraged by the idea of him making electronic games, but his grandfather is completely overjoyed. Knowing Jinwoo's genius background in neuroscience and artificial intelligence, the family thinks game development is a safe, healthy hobby to keep his brilliant mind occupied. To support his grandson's new interest, the grandfather immediately gifts him FS Games, a struggling subsidiary company. It is a massive corporate building, and for Jinwoo, it is the perfect playground. Since the company is nearly ruined, he can execute his plans without any corporate interference. With the Earth side of things secured, Jinwoo shifts his consciousness back across the dimensional divide. He opens his eyes in his original, powerful Archmage body, resting on a grand throne inside the magic tower. He notices his body has been subtly altered to look like a handsome young boy, but his connection to his earthly body remains perfectly smooth. He can easily remote control his Earth self using a simple auto-execution spell. Now, it is time to start building the game's story. To help write the narrative, Jinwoo visits the Magic Tower's library to find High Elf Tia, the brilliant but highly dramatic storyteller of Arslan. Jinwoo presents her with a unique problem. How do you make complete strangers work desperately to save a world they have no connection to? Tia has a simple, dramatic answer: love and tragedy. She explains that if a player falls in love with a beautiful character, only for that character to meet a tragic end right before their eyes, their grief will drive them to seek revenge. Jinwoo realizes this is a brilliant psychological trick. By immersing the players in a tragic story, they will naturally fight the monsters on their own. When Jinwoo promises that millions of souls will read her story, Tia's dramatic writer's passion explodes, and she happily agrees to help. Together, they map out the game's initial structure. They decide to summon 3,000 players for the first beta test, starting them off in a peaceful, medieval tutorial village called Ebent. But to make this game feel incredibly real to the players on Earth, Jinwoo needs a promotional demonstration video. And since the Gate of Souls can only summon one person at a time right now, he must film this teaser using local actors. Jinwoo telepathically summons his 3 most loyal subordinates to Rainsword Castle. When they arrive, they look like a formidable team of villains, which is exactly what he needs. He has Baron Hasman Agast, a respected local leader, Halon, the former holy priest, and Haina, the confident knight commander. Jinwoo immediately starts handcrafting their costumes for the video. He dresses the holy priest, Halon, in the dark, skeletal robes of a terrifying necromancer. Then, he turns to the knight commander, Haina. In typical fantasy game fashion, Jinwoo hands her a highly revealing set of customized armor. When a blushing Haina questions if this even counts as armor, Jinwoo explains that in the other world, the greater the visual impact, the higher the defensive stats. To make the video truly dramatic, Jinwoo also needs a delicate, sorrowful saintess for the players to protect. He briefly considers the actual Saintess Tabisa, but immediately rejects the idea, remembering that the real Saintess is actually an incredibly muscular, energetic, 200-year-old man. Fortunately, Jinwoo spots Eri, a succubus with bat-like wings and a tail, playing with children in the courtyard. Despite her protests that she is just a succubus meant to seduce people, Jinwoo decides she is the perfect fit to play the tragic Saintess. With his uniquely costumed cast finally assembled in the glowing hall, Jinwoo smiles, ready to begin acting out their grand performance. In the grand hall of the Magic Tower, golden stained glass windows cast a warm light over the throne where Jinwoo stands. His blonde, elf-like disciple, Darius, kneels formally before him, listing out his massive, dramatic titles. Jinwoo just raises an arm to cut her off, telling her she can drop the formalities. Darius obeys, but as she looks back at the crowd behind her, a tear of emotional strain wells up in her eyes. Following Jinwoo's exact orders, she has gathered all 130 of his disciples. The problem is, they are all dressed in incredibly bizarre, elaborate costumes, whispering among themselves about what kind of strange roleplay they've been dragged into. Holding a swirling, glowing blue orb, Jinwoo just smirks. He tells them they are role-playing to save their world, Arslan. Before explaining the details, Jinwoo drops a massive announcement to the crowd of robed disciples. He reveals that he has recently awakened his powers, and he can now open the Gate of Souls to contact another world. The cathedral-like space erupts into excited murmurs as the disciples celebrate his awakening. Jinwoo explains that through this gate, he is going to summon heroes from his original world who are completely immune to corruption. To make sure these heroes can fight for Arslan, the disciples need to set aside their current duties and help him prepare. Jinwoo hands the glowing blue orb to a group of mages. The orb contains the raw footage of the video he just shot with his commanders. Jinwoo commands the mages to use their magic to edit the video, making the background more detailed, adding more skeletons, and making the entire thing look grand and sacred. Then, he tells them to compress the entire video so it can fit inside a single, tiny mana crystal. The mages look at each other in sheer panic, but Jinwoo just flashes a confident smirk. He knows that making the impossible possible is exactly what mages do. Looking at their heavy, blue hooded cloaks, Jinwoo thinks they look exactly like a certain blue cartoon cat from Earth. He hilariously dubs them his Magic-Hamons, explaining it is a creature from Earth that makes every wish come true, and the confused mages bow in acceptance. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the busy streets of Seoul hum with traffic. Jinwoo steps onto the pavement dressed in a sharp, dark suit, adjusting his tie. Thanks to his loyal mages, the magical demo video has been perfectly finished and compressed inside a sleek briefcase. He is met by a muscular secretary named Kim Han-soo, who has been sent by the company chairman to assist Jinwoo. Han-soo guides him into the building, reporting that all the employees are already gathered in the meeting room. Inside the office of FS Games, the head of development, Han Yongshan, sits sweating at his desk. He is staring at a grim report detailing the total collapse of their gaming company. He knows Jinwoo is a certified genius with 5 PhDs, and he desperately wonders why a man with that much talent would buy a dying company. Suddenly, the doors fly open. Jinwoo walks in with an unbelievable aura that completely overwhelms the room, to the point that Yongshan's glasses comically crack from the sheer pressure. Jinwoo takes his place at the front of the conference room. Yongshan tries to maintain control of the meeting, bluntly pointing out that their previous game failed before it even launched, causing the development team to quit. The remaining lead developer bows his head in shame, bracing for the worst. But Jinwoo just taps his fingers on the desk with a smug smile. He tells them that since everything has already fallen apart, they can clean it all up and start fresh. He slides a document across the table titled Project Arsalan. The employees flip through the pages, completely amazed by the excellent medieval world building and concept art. However, Yongshan remains highly skeptical. He points out that Jinwoo is proposing a virtual reality game, a platform where sales are historically terrible because nobody owns the headsets. Jinwoo just smiles, confidently stating that people won't be able to get their hands on this game because it will sell out instantly. He stands up, declaring that he is going to turn the world upside down with this game, and asks to see their motion capture studio. A short while later, the skeptical employees gather inside the tiled studio, whispering that Jinwoo might just be a scammer. Jinwoo orders the lights turned off, plunging the room into absolute darkness. He kneels on the floor, holding a small black cube, and tells everyone to step back. When he presses his hand down on the cube, it suddenly erupts with glowing blue light rays. The digital lines transform, and the employees suddenly feel themselves floating in a brilliant vortex of energy. Before they can process what is happening, the simulation materializes around them. Yongshan screams in absolute terror as he finds himself standing in a vast, open, grassy field under a blue sky. Above them, a massive, terrifying red dragon tears through the clouds, letting out a deafening roar. As the employees panic and try to run, Jinwoo merely laughs, telling them to stay calm because it is just a hologram. Yongshan is left stuttering in disbelief as a herd of strange, fantastical creatures flees across the plains. Jinwoo explains that this is Arsalan, the actual world where their new game takes place. The employees are left in sheer awe, completely unable to understand how this level of technology is even possible. But Jinwoo smiles and tells them it is time to move on to the main story. Suddenly, a total solar eclipse blocks out the sun, turning the sky a blood-red orange. The ground cracks open, and skeletal hands burst through the soil. Too dark, menacing figures draped in glowing magic descend from the sky. It is Halon and Hasmon, perfectly acting out their roles as terrifying dark villains, cackling wildly about corrupting mortals. A swarm of skeletal warriors rushes the field, causing the terrified employees to flee from the simulated explosions. Right on cue, Haina charges into the fray. Clad in her highly revealing customized armor, she swings her sword dynamically, shattering the skeleton warriors to pieces. Then, a soothing voice echoes from above. Bathed in brilliant golden light, Ari floats downward as the tragic saintess, reaching her glowing hands out to protect them. The simulation is so flawlessly realistic that the employees completely lose themselves in the moment. Standing in the virtual rain, the crowd erupts into tearful cheers, praising the saintess and the holy knight who saved them. Jinwoo stands calmly amidst the roaring, emotional crowd, a confident smirk spreading across his face. Everything is going exactly according to plan, and his audience is already completely hooked. Jinwoo watched the emotional crowd from the sidelines, knowing they were already completely hooked. But he was not done yet. With a confident smile, he decided it was time to bring his grand demonstration to its ultimate climax. Within the projection, a terrifying necromancer clad in tattered green robes raised his staff. Channeling dark magic, the villain summoned a fresh horde of skeletal warriors to tear the mortals apart. As the army charged, the red-haired warrior, Haina, raised her sword while Ari the Saintess floated above, pleading for everyone to lend them their strength. The employees of FS Games were so deeply immersed in the virtual world that they actually raised their hands to help. Golden energy began to flow from their bodies to answer the Saintess's call. With her sword now crackling with powerful lightning, Hyena lunged forward and shattered the skeletal army to pieces, sparking passionate war cries from the crowd. As the holy flames overwhelmed the necromancer, the defeated villain desperately cried out to his master, the Lord of Corruption. Suddenly, a cold, masked figure cloaked in a sinister purple aura stepped forward. With total disdain for his failing servant, the mysterious lord vaporized the necromancer on the spot, turning his cold gaze directly toward the terrified employees. Just as absolute panic erupted and everyone began to run for their lives, the virtual simulation snapped shut. The bright lights of the real room flickered back on. The employees were left shivering and gasping on the wet floor, completely overwhelmed by the terrifying realism of what they had just experienced. Jinwoo stood calmly by the light switch, asking if they enjoyed his little concept video. The room erupted into frantic chatter as the employees scrambled up, begging to see the Saintess again. Han Yongshan, the highly skeptical manager, adjusted his glasses in utter disbelief, finally realizing the incredible value of the technology they were holding. Seeing their hesitation melt away, Jinwoo told them to go out and spread the word that FS Games was developing a true virtual reality game. The employees eagerly pledged their loyalty, promising to follow him anywhere. To make things easy, Jinwoo instructed them to throw away everything they knew about old game development. They would start completely from scratch using his advanced custom engine and specialized AI assistants. Within days, rumors of the secret virtual reality project leaked onto an online forum app called Blinder. The internet went into absolute chaos. While some desperate gamers praised Jinwoo as a savior who would deliver their dream world, skeptics flooded the forums, calling the entire project a massive scam. Sitting in his private laboratory, Jinwoo calmly reviewed the online storm. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his grandfather, the powerful chairman of the Ocean Group. The old man was absolutely furious at the online trolls and wanted to unleash his company's massive legal team to shut them down. Jinwoo chuckled, telling his grandfather that the online skepticism was actually excellent free publicity. When the chairman asked how the actual business was coming along, Jinwoo held up a sleek, blue-glowing prototype headset. He explained that the prototype was officially complete. Knowing his grandfather was a passionate fisherman who had been forced to stay home due to severe back pain, Jinwoo offered to take him on a special trip. He promised to bring the device straight to the grandfather's mansion to show him something truly spectacular. That night, Jinwoo arrived at the estate and helped his grandfather put on the comfortable VR goggles. The old man was impressed by the high-quality design, but he had no idea what was actually in store for him. With a quiet click, Jinwoo activated the device, welcoming his grandfather to the world of Arsalan. The grandfather opened his eyes to find himself standing in a lush, sun-drenched forest. When he looked down at his hands, he was stunned. Instead of his frail, aching body, he was trapped in a muscular, youthful form from his 40s. For the first time in years, all of his chronic physical pain had completely vanished. When the grandfather asked how such impossible technology could exist, Jinwoo used his carefully prepared excuse, explaining that he had spent his time in a vegetative state designing the system in his mind. Before the old man could question him further, Jinwoo led him to a pristine, crystal-clear blue lake surrounded by majestic mountains. To prepare for their catch, Jinwoo used his magic to manifest a custom, high-tech fishing rod. The grandfather eagerly grabbed it, feeling the familiar weight of his younger years, and cast his line deep into the water. Suddenly, the lake rumbled violently. The fishing rod bent to its absolute limit as a massive, blue-scaled magical fish erupted from the water. Channeling his newly restored physical strength, the grandfather fought against the beast, laughing triumphantly as he reeled it in. Drenched in water, but filled with an incredible rush of adrenaline, the grandfather let out a booming laugh that echoed across the mountains. He had long accepted the slow decay of his aging body, but in this virtual world, he felt truly alive again. Jinwoo watched his grandfather ride the giant magical fish through the forest like a wild steed, roaring with joyful energy. Though Jinwoo knew he would eventually have to bring people from Earth to this world to help protect Arsalan from real danger, seeing his grandfather this happy made the entire journey worth it. Under the quiet night sky of Arsalan, the steady crackle of a campfire echoed through the dark forest. Jinwoo's grandfather, currently using a muscular, blue-haired virtual avatar, sat happily devouring a freshly caught magical fish. He was amazed that he could actually taste the food and feel completely full in this digital world. But their peaceful dinner was suddenly interrupted. Two armed figures stepped out from the moonlit trees, a bearded human and an elf archer. They were local guards who had never seen outsiders in this territory before. Overhearing Jinwoo and his grandfather speaking in strange, modern Earth terms, the guards became highly suspicious. The elf archer drew his bow, ordering them to freeze so they could be dragged before the local lord. Jinwoo didn't want any trouble, but he also didn't want his grandfather's peaceful vacation ruined. Before the guards could take another step, Jinwoo let his terrifying presence flare. His eyes glowed a menacing crimson as dark energy and flames swirled around him, shaking the forest. He bellowed at them to leave, warning them that he was discussing important business with a VIP. Feeling the crushing weight of his power, the terrified guards assumed Jinwoo was some supreme lord, apologized frantically, and fled into the night. The grandfather, completely oblivious to Arsalan's reality, chuckled and assumed it was just a funny programming bug. Jinwoo simply smiled and played along. As the fire burned low, the grandfather adjusted his glowing blue connection device, admiring how far the project had come. Now that they had the backing of the powerful Osung Group chairman, development was moving faster than ever. Jinwoo took the connection device back for further adjustments, gently teasing his grandfather when the old man clutched his aching back and complained about his aging body. They shared a warm farewell as their minds drifted back to reality. Back on Earth, the FS Games office was buzzing with energy. Thanks to the chairman's unlimited support, the programming and art teams were working day and night. They used detailed scenarios written by Tia, the High Elf, to design hyper-realistic environments and characters. The art team was especially obsessed with Prince Leon, a staggeringly handsome blonde knight in shining armor. Everyone wanted a chance to test the game, but only the top directors had access so far. That's when the lead developer, Han Yongshan, gathered the staff for a massive announcement. FS Games was invited to participate in Universe Unpacked, a massive global product showcase hosted by Osung Electronics. After enduring months of public mockery and skepticism, they finally had the chance to prove themselves on the world stage. To hype up the team, Yongshan announced that every single employee would receive a top-tier connection device called the Soul Link for an exclusive internal test. Before Jinwoo could celebrate with his team, his phone buzzed. It was a demanding text from his grandfather, ordering him to open the servers immediately because he was already on his way to the office. Laughing nervously, Jinwoo had to make a quick escape to handle the eager chairman. A few days later, the night of the Universe Unpacked event arrived. The massive modern convention center was packed with tech reviewers, reporters, and a highly skeptical crowd. A popular tech reviewer named Handel and his cameraman stood outside, questioning whether this revolutionary VR tech was just another elaborate corporate scam. Inside the dark presentation hall, the host welcomed Jinwoo to the stage. As the crowd whispered about the genius heir who had returned from the brink of death, Jinwoo stepped up with absolute confidence. He began his presentation by acknowledging the wild internet memes about his return, before promising a product that would shatter all expectations. Suddenly, the entire presentation hall underwent a spectacular transformation. A massive torrent of blue water swept over the audience, making them gasp as they felt the physical sensation of realistic waves. Jinwoo stood untouched in the center of the simulated ocean, explaining how humanity had conquered the seas. The scene shifted instantly to a baking, wind-swept desert, and then to a freezing, snowy mountain. The audience actually shivered, touching the real, freezing cold snow that drifted onto their shoulders. Jinwoo explained that while humanity had conquered the Earth and even reached for the stars, the physical limits of our universe prevented true, endless exploration. That was why he decided to build a brand new world for them to explore. With a snap of his fingers, the starry space surrounding them shattered. Crackling purple lightning engulfed the room, revealing a barren wasteland beneath a blood-red moon. Swarms of small, pink-winged creatures swooped down on the screaming, panicked crowd. Amidst the chaos, the legendary figures of Arsalan materialized on stage. Haina holding her sword, Eri floating with radiant wings, and Halan's skeletal warriors, all standing beneath a colossal, terrifying skull monster. This was Arsalan's Saga, a fully immersive virtual reality world. Jinwoo revealed the sleek white Soul Link headset, announcing that early access would begin in just 2 weeks, limited to only 2,500 units. The steep price tag and limited quantity caused an instant explosion of skepticism online, with many calling it a massive fraud. Yet, despite the heavy backlash, the pre-orders sold out in seconds. Tech reviewers like Handel could only watch in anticipation, realizing that if this game was real, it would change the world forever. 2 weeks later, the sun shone brightly over the magical lands of Arsalan. Dragons soared through the clear skies above rolling green hills and distant palaces. Standing in a quiet field, his eyes glowing with brilliant gold light, Jinwoo raised his staff and watched the horizon. The moment had finally come. Earth's greatest heroes were about to arrive. While Jinwoo waited for the portal to open, his team was busy setting up the ultimate stage. At the tutorial camp, local villagers were undergoing intense acting rehearsals. Haygod, the new owner of the Advent Tavern, tried his best to sound welcoming, but Tia, the premier storyteller of Arsalan, stopped him immediately. She scolded him for his awkward acting and ordered him to eat 6 meals a day so he could look like a properly plump innkeeper. Next was Thompson, the local blacksmith. He raised a glowing hammer and practiced delivering a devastating blow, letting his hand slip and breaking a weapon on purpose. Tia smiled sarcastically, urging him to make the heartbreak of a failed item enhancement feel even more agonizing. To get the players truly immersed in this world, every detail had to be convincing. Jinwoo watched the busy preparations from the edge of the town square. While his disciples and the villagers worked hard, he knew they had deeper challenges to face. Reclaiming the eroded lands with the help of Earth's players would take time, and their current shortage of mana stones was a major hurdle. For now, he decided to focus on the immediate tasks. But there was another issue. Tia pointed out that they still lacked a handsome knight to play Prince Leon, the central hero who would inspire the players to fight for Arsalan. Jin Woo suggested using any skilled swordsman, but Tia refused, arguing that the grizzled, battle-scarred veterans in their ranks did not fit the heroic visual needed to capture the players' hearts. That was when Tyra stepped forward with a mischievous smile. She announced that she could create an entirely custom artificial body with flawless swordsmanship, though she admitted she might add a few personal design choices. She led Jin Woo and Tia into a massive, ornate hall filled with experimental dolls and resting puppets. In the corner, a tiny doll resembling a child version of Jin Woo was being hugged tightly, while other spirits bickered over which cute puppet to transfer their souls into. Ignoring the chaos, Tyrus guided them to a platform covered by a heavy red cloth. With a dramatic flourish, Tyrus pulled back the cloth to reveal her masterpiece. Suddenly, the lifeless body sprang forward in a flash of movement. Jin Woo reacted instantly, blocking a lightning-fast strike that shook the training hall. The puppet's speed and power were breathtaking. Tyrus explained that she had spent a month crafting the body, using actual dragon bones and synthetic fibers woven with raw energy. To complete the set, Jin Woo had spent a fortune crafting the puppet's armor from the scales of the legendary dragon Helvi, custom forged by dwarf artisans. Satisfied with the combat test, Jin Woo took his seat on the throne and initiated the soul connection, bringing the artificial Prince Leon to life. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the countdown was finally ending. In Seoul, a famous streamer named Habel sat in her gaming chair, her stream chat flying by as millions of viewers watched skeptically. Holding the sleek blue Soul Link headset, she took a deep breath. As the clock struck 10, a prompt appeared on her screen. She pressed start, and a brilliant flash of blue light enveloped her senses, pulling her consciousness deep into the network. Habel opened her eyes to find herself floating in a cosmic, starry space. Holographic menus materialized around her, and she could see her live stream chat reacting in absolute shock. Realizing this was indeed a true virtual reality, she eagerly customized her avatar, selecting the elf race. In an instant, she was transported into Arsalan, her boots touching down on the soft, vibrant grass of a sun-drenched forest. System notifications popped up, jokingly pointing out her customized stats, but she was too amazed by the realism of the world to care. As she wondered which way to go, a calm, gentle voice spoke from behind her, pointing toward a stone pathway. Habel turned around and froze. Standing beneath the bright blue sky was a remarkably handsome knight with shining blonde hair, brilliant blue eyes, and polished armor. Smiling warmly, the legendary hero bowed slightly and asked if she would like to walk with him to the starting village. His name was Leon. Habel stepped through the gates and into Ebent Village, a bustling, vibrant starter town filled with medieval-style buildings under a brilliant blue sky. The streets were already packed with players. Some were sprinting around in pure excitement, while others looked completely lost, wondering if they had somehow been transported from other game worlds entirely. Seeing the massive crowd, Habel looked at her live stream chat, which was already flying by with viewers marveling at how realistic the beginner zone felt. Wanting to get her bearings, Habel approached an armored guard standing near a wooden doorway. Under his heavy helmet, the poor guard was actually sweating profusely, desperately trying to remember his script. He put on a warm smile and asked her to state her name. She went with her streaming nickname, Habel, triggering a system notification that humorously reduced her agility because of her character's model. Seeing how lifelike his reactions were, she wondered if he was a real player, but the guard simply repeated his welcoming lines, making it clear he was just an incredibly detailed non-player character. As Habel made her way toward the Grand Adventurer Guild on the guard's advice, she and her viewers couldn't help but wonder about Leon, the handsome knight who had escorted her earlier. Little did they know, Jin Woo was floating high above the city, smugly watching the players' reactions. He activated his scanning magic to check the potentials of the new crowd. Most players had very low ranks, but when he scanned Habel, his eyes widened. She possessed a rare A-rank trait called Social Evolution, a talent that allowed her to easily befriend anyone, including mindless beasts and spirits. For Jin Woo, this was a massive find. If nurtured, her ability would be incredibly useful for purifying the corrupted, eroded lands of this world. Down in the town square, Habel entered the majestic Adventurer Guild. She was greeted by a stunningly beautiful elf registrar named Tia. After signing her registration papers, Tia handed over a starter kit containing a spatial pouch, a support grant, and an appraiser's note. But while Tia put on a sweet, perfect front for the new heroes, her true personality was completely different behind closed doors. The moment she was alone, Tia's polite smile vanished. She was actually quite sadistic, hoping to see these summoned heroes suffer. Unfortunately for her, the players were far too chaotic to control. A massive, pink-haired warrior from a martial arts world suddenly barged in demanding service, and other players began causing utter madness, even trying to eat the paper quest forms. Soon, players discovered that if they successfully flustered Tia, they would receive a special title called Prankster. This triggered a wave of players trolling the poor registrar just for the achievement, leaving a completely exhausted Tia clutching her head in a dark room, desperately swearing she would eventually get her revenge and watch them all cry. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the successful launch of the game caused a massive global shockwave. News headlines everywhere announced that this virtual reality was actually a real, physical world, and that Jinwoo had kept silent simply because the truth was too hard to believe. Influencers and tech critics who had previously called the game a scam were forced to host humiliating apology streams. Governments rushed to air emergency broadcasts, realizing that anyone who failed to adapt to this monumental global shift would be left behind forever. 1 week later, the hype around the company was still at an all-time high, with delivery trucks carrying banners of praise parked right outside the offices. Inside, Jinwoo met with his developers to plan the next phase. They decided to open pre-orders for another 50,000 players to speed up their progress, while also preparing for Leon's official story entrance. To get ready for his role, Jinwoo traveled back to the game world and began practicing dramatic lines in front of a mirror. However, a female elf knight named Haina caught him in the middle of his embarrassing rehearsal, leaving Jinwoo flushing red as he quickly tried to act cool. Clearing his throat to save his dignity, Jinwoo got back to business. He asked Haina if there were any nearby hunting grounds where the new players could safely train and level up. Unfortunately, there were no private territories they could borrow, meaning the players had nowhere safe to grow. Knowing they had to find a solution, Jinwoo decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. He traveled far beyond the safety of the castle walls, arriving at a dark, rugged wasteland. Standing at the edge of the cliff, he looked out at a massive, swirling purple vortex of corrupt energy crackling with lightning. If his players needed a place to train, he was going to have to clear this land himself. Jinwoo stepped onto the cracked earth of the dark wasteland, the heavy, corrupting energy of the area pressing against him under a blood-red moon. It was an incredibly unpleasant place, but he had work to do. Drawing his sword, he infused the blade with sharp blue magic and unleashed a fiery blast against the rocky cliffs. The massive explosion echoed through the canyon, acting as a loud knock on the door to draw out the master of this domain. From a swirling vortex of purple and pink energy, a colossal, grotesque mouth lined with jagged white teeth manifested in the gloom. This terrifying entity was the Lord of Erosion, a monster with multiple glowing red eyes that burned with pure malice. Looking down at Jinwoo, the beast sneered, asking if the mage had finally come to offer his soul. Jinwoo looked back at the creature, remembering how the proudest holy knights and priests of this world had once fallen to its power, their souls torn away and corrupted into mindless slaves. In his past, Jinwoo had fought this monster completely alone and lost, but today was different. The Lord of Erosion mocked Jinwoo, asking how long his pathetic barrier would protect him. Instead of showing fear, Jinwoo simply smirked and pointed his staff at the monster's face, saying he actually felt sorry for it. Leaving the furious monster shouting behind him, Jinwoo turned his attention to the valley below. Using a magical searching device, he quickly located what he was looking for, a pack of level 10 goblins mutated by the dark corruption, their red eyes burning with hatred. The monster scoffed, saying that wiping out those creatures was pointless because they would just regenerate within the corruption. Jinwoo agreed that doing it alone was useless, but he had a different plan. He stepped onto a massive, glowing blue magic circle that lit up the entire mountain range, initiating high-level spatial magic. Before the shocked monster could stop him, Jinwoo snapped his fingers and began warping the mutated goblins out of the valley. With a smug smile, Jinwoo told the screaming Lord of Erosion that he was borrowing the goblins, and that from now on, the giant monster was officially the mid-boss of the game's very first main quest. To pay for the monsters he took, Jinwoo tossed a glowing, pixelated magical bomb toward the beast. The bomb detonated in a blinding explosion of holy light, leaving the furious Lord of Erosion screaming in agony as Jinwoo sprouted glowing blue wings and flew away into the night sky. Meanwhile, deep in the beginner forest of Ebent Village, a party of 3 players was busy hunting. The group consisted of a green-haired warrior named Somyeon, a red-haired mage named Buddha Jumps Over the Wall, and an elf archer named Haebyul. They were casually chatting about their quests, hoping to find some rare loot, when the entire forest suddenly fell deathly quiet. The light faded away, replaced by a thick, dark purple fog. Before they could figure out what was happening, 3 massive, purple-skinned goblins with glowing red eyes rushed out of the shadows. The players assumed these were just slightly stronger elite monsters. Confident in his strength, Somyeon stepped forward to take them down, but the lead goblin moved with terrifying, unnatural speed. With a single, brutal slash, the monster cut down the warrior, sending him crashing to the ground. Panicked and angry, the red-haired mage raised his staff and launched a massive fireball, engulfing the goblins in a fiery explosion. For a brief second, it seemed like the attack had worked. However, before the smoke could even clear, a dark silhouette burst through the flames. With another swift strike, the mage was cleaved through and forced to log out of the game. Haebyul was left completely alone in the dark forest, her hands trembling violently as she held her bow. The three terrifying, mutated goblins slowly stepped out of the shadows, their red eyes locked onto her. Realizing these were no ordinary monsters, she fired a desperate arrow and closed her eyes as a massive blade swung directly toward her neck. Suddenly, a brilliant golden energy tore through the darkness, shattering the blade. A figure clad in polished silver armor and a flowing blue cape dropped from the trees, slamming his boot heavily onto the lead goblin's head and crushing it instantly. Haebyul fell to her knees in absolute shock, looking up at the handsome knight standing before her. Prince Leon turned back with deep, comforting blue eyes, gently asking the terrified player if she was all right. Just like an incredibly intricate luxury watch requires hundreds of moving parts to run smoothly, creating a highly refined human body requires absolute precision. To make his avatar, Jin Woo used the advanced magic of Arsalan. A master artisan named Tyrus crafted Leon's body with 24 layers of high-tier spells. One passive spell ensures he always looks unblemished, while another emits a soft aura that changes based on how people feel when they look at him. There is even a spell that releases a comforting scent tailored to whoever is near him. As Haebyul stared at the glowing knight in the middle of the dark forest, she was completely dazed. Her viewers noticed immediately. A quick donation message popped up on her screen, telling her to stop drooling and pull herself together. Leon, completely unaware of her stream, gently asked if she was hurt. He then cast a soothing healing spell, wrapping her in a warm purple and yellow light. Her viewers went wild. In this game, basic players did not have access to healing spells yet, making Leon's abilities look even more extraordinary. But things quickly got awkward. When another viewer donated a large sum of money, Haebyul's streamer instincts kicked in. She immediately did a playful, winking reaction for her channel. Leon stared at her in silence. Seeing her strange movements, he assumed the impact from the goblins had damaged her head. With a look of deep pity, he reached out to heal her brain, leaving her blushing and desperately trying to explain that she was fine. It only got worse when a massive donation came in, offering 5 million won if she did a cute rabbit dance. Unable to resist the money, Haebyul embarrassedly hopped around like a rabbit. Leon was now entirely convinced she needed serious medical treatment at a temple and suggested they move to a safe place. This hilarious moment quickly became a viral sensation back on Earth, racking up hundreds of millions of views. As they walked through the quiet forest, Haebyul quietly followed the handsome knight. Leon explained that the dark purple energy of the erosion was expanding across the land. This corruption was weakening the natural barriers and mutating normal creatures into aggressive monsters, like the goblins she had just faced. Inside Leon's body, Jin Woo was analyzing Haebyul's player profile. He noticed she had an incredibly high affinity with non-player characters. Realizing she would be the perfect person to lead a major campaign, Jin Woo decided to use his avatar to give her a quest. A massive quest screen appeared before Haebyul. The objective was to eliminate the corrupted goblins, but the difficulty was set to very hard, requiring a team of over 200 players. While gathering that many people seemed nearly impossible, she accepted the quest immediately, determined to help her savior. Over the next few days, Jin Woo used Leon to build a massive reputation among the player base. He roamed the beginner areas, protecting low-level players from dangerous beasts and distributing helpful items. He praised their efforts and handed out bags of potions, telling them that having their support was all the reward he needed. These heartwarming interactions quickly spread across Earth's internet. Players shared stories of how Leon's encouraging words gave them the courage to overcome their real-life isolation and face the world. This massive wave of positive energy was exactly what Jin Woo wanted. Back in his Seoul office, he watched the online forums with a satisfied smile, knowing the players would soon be motivated enough to form the army he needed. But to get them moving even faster, he needed to turn up the pressure. Jin Woo shifted his consciousness back to his original Archmage body inside Arsalan's magic tower. He walked into his private sanctum, where his assistant, Tia, was waiting. The magic tower was successfully acting as a hub to maintain stable control over his remote avatars. Looking at the humming magical devices, Jin Woo could feel the dark energy of the erosion's core pulsing in the distance. He knew that if the players faced more frequent monster attacks, they would form the subjugation force much faster. To make that happen, Jin Woo ordered Tia to assemble their key allies, including Baron Hasman and Priest Halon. When Tia asked what they were going to do with them, Jin Woo's lips curled into a grin. It was time for them to become the goblins. When Baron Hasman and Priest Halon arrived, they leaned in close with wide, eager grins. They were desperate to do whatever they could to help Arsalan. Jin Woo, feeling a bit overwhelmed by their intense energy, told them to sit down while they waited for Tia to arrive. But just as he wondered where she was, a soft whisper sounded right behind his shoulder. Tia was standing mere centimeters away, glaring with a furious red aura. Jin Woo jumped back in absolute terror, clutching his chest. Tia slumped onto the couch in complete exhaustion. When Jin Woo asked what happened, she erupted in anger. A high-ranking player had spent the entire day pulling ridiculous pranks and causing absolute mayhem inside the Adventurer Guild. Halon and Hasman felt the exact same frustration. Halon admitted the players in the church were whispering suspicious things about his identity, making him want to just eliminate them. Hasman sighed, complaining that these players acted like they knew everything when they actually knew nothing. Looking at his deeply frustrated subordinates, Jinwoo knew it was the perfect time to introduce his solution. Jinwoo reached into his cloak and pulled out modern gaming controllers. He explained that these devices were terminals to control goblins. His plan was simple. His subordinates would take control of the goblins and slaughter the players. While this sounded harsh, there was a very important reason behind it. The players needed a real challenge, so they would be forced to band together and form a proper subjugation party for Arsalan. Since these players were visitors of the soul who could revive after death, Tia pointed out that they did not need to hold back at all. The idea of controlling such filthy creatures initially shocked them, but they took the controllers anyway. Jinwoo brought up a blue holographic display and explained the basic buttons. When Tia nervously pressed a button, a magical screen flickered to life, showing a purple-skinned, horned goblin running through a forest. Within minutes, the entire atmosphere of the sanctum changed. The former pope, the ancient mages, and the high-ranking knights were all sitting on the floor, intensely button-mashing like hardcore gamers. Meanwhile, Jinwoo returned to Earth to check on his plans. It was Monday evening, and he smiled as he looked at his phone wallpaper, which showed a picture of his subordinates happily playing video games. He calculated his next steps. Once the players defeated this corrupted goblin boss, the lowest tier encroachment would be revealed, kicking off the main story of the game. That would be the perfect time to launch the second round of Soul Link sales. But before he could finish his thoughts, his grandfather slammed a spoon onto the dining table, glared at him with deep disappointment, and walked away. Jinwoo was left sitting alone, completely bewildered by his grandfather's sudden anger. Back in Arsalan, the village of Ebent had fallen into complete chaos. Players were panicking over ruined herbs and stolen meat, desperately shouting for high-ranking players to join a goblin subjugation force. Out in the woods, a massive, mutated purple goblin with glowing yellow eyes was moving with blinding speed. The players tried to defend themselves, but the goblin suddenly unleashed a high-tier fire spell, completely obliterating them. The players screamed in sheer terror, utterly baffled by a goblin that could cast high-level magic. In the magic tower, the culprits behind this chaos were celebrating. Tyrus, Tia, and the others were high-fiving, their eyes bloodshot from playing nonstop. Jinwoo realized they were no longer just training the players. They were actively tormenting them. The goblin's stats had even updated, earning the title of Level 10 Red Ribbon Hero Slayer after wiping out dozens of players. To add to the humiliation, Tia and Haina forced two giant, muscular goblins to do ridiculous, synchronized gymnastics on a bar. The players watched in absolute fury, pushed to their boiling point by the mocking monsters. But Jinwoo knew this extreme provocation was exactly what the players needed. Outside Ebent Village, hundreds of furious players gathered, raising their weapons and shouting for vengeance. The massive subjugation force was officially forming, exactly as Jinwoo had planned. Seeing their burning motivation, Jinwoo smiled. Back in his vessel, as Leon, he adjusted his belt and walked down the grand hall under the warm golden light. Looking back with gleaming blue eyes, he knew it was finally time to set off.